It's beautiful, isn't it? But even standing right here on the coast, you know what I'm smelling? Cow manure. When I first moved to California, I have to admit that when I saw cows along the coastline, I thought it was pretty cool. I came from a really desolate area that was just feedlots. No trees, no plant life, literally just cows standing on top of each other. So to see some cows out in a field with the ocean behind them, I was like, wow, that's kind of cool. But now I'm realizing that our whole coast is that way. It's dominated by cattle grazing. You have ocean, and then you either have human development or you have human agriculture, largely grazing. Cows on the left, ocean on the right. What are we leaving for the wildlife that used to come from land to the shore, or from the shore to the land? It's fences, it's yards, it's houses, it's grazing land. I mean, this entire drive today was cows right up until I hit the ocean. It's a ridiculous amount of cows. We can't possibly need that many cows. In fact, we don't even need one cow nutritionally. I haven't eaten a cow in over 2 years, and I'm doing better than ever. It's not even the cows as much as it is the vast amounts of land that the cows are grazed on, or additional crops that are grown to feed just the cows. Why are we destroying everything that was once beautiful for something we don't even need to eat? Tradition? Culture? When I drive through these northern counties like Yolo and Mendocino and Marin and Napa, it usually starts on Highway 80, where I, even there, am surrounded by grazing land. Yes, believe it or not, even there, you may not be noticing it, but take a closer look. In fact, let me point out that even in some of the areas that have trees and look a little bit nicer than the really desolate grazing land, there's still cows in there. Just because they left a few trees does not mean it's not still grazing land. But back to the route. So I start on Highway 80, and then if I go really far north, I'll cut over on 5, which is just a complete nightmare of endless agriculture. You get on the 37, there's Highway 1, Novato Road, Point Reyes Petaluma Road, Sir Francis Drake Boulevard, Nicasio Valley Road. Every single one of them is bordered by agriculture, primarily grazing land. Organizations such as the Marin Agricultural Land Trust, MALT, ranching associations, and the like have done a great job of selling the idea that they are good people doing a good service. All along these roads you can see signs saying "Protected Forever." In most cases, our ignorance inclines us to agree with them. Anything that isn't a housing development or business center or high-rises, we consider to be a refreshing change. Don't be fooled. Just because there aren't high-rises back here doesn't mean it's wildlife habitat. That's grazing ground. You see anything other than cows out there? What we naively celebrate is actually a massive land grab by a very powerful industry. Some ecologists have gone so far as to say that the destructive practices of agriculture, particularly cattle grazing, is actually even worse than development. Last year's Bloomberg article also woke me up to the fact that urbanization, as much as I hate it, doesn't hold a candle to agriculture, particularly, again, cattle grazing. What was once native habitat is now replaced with annual invasive plants. In my interview with George Worthner, he kind of woke me up when he stated that his backyard resembles habitat more than the monocultured, over-grazed fields that cattle use, literally stating that native birds and other small critters have a better chance of surviving in his yard, a part of urbanization, than in this quote-unquote open space. I mean, there's a little something going on out there. You've got some gophers and some vultures and some hawks. I mean, you have animals trying to survive, but are you really going to call that habitat? Indeed, if you stop and consider what you are witnessing driving by these fields, what animal can really make use of this other than livestock, which of course are protected by fences and the ranchers? Which brings me to the next point. How do you think predators are received on such land? I won't even mention bears or wolves because agriculture already wiped out any chance of us ever seeing those here. But we do still have coyotes and supposedly some mountain lions around here. So as far as the eye can see, there is nothing but grazing land, privately owned grazing land. which means that the only thing that mountain lions or coyotes have to choose from is that land and the animals that are on that land. Well, guess what animals are on that land? Business livestock. How do you think businessmen respond to animals that want to eat their business? We are already killing elk within a national seashore because they eat grass that the ranchers want reserved for their cattle. We're killing herbivores because of the business. How are we going to react to predators? I'm sure you can figure out the answer to that, but if not, just try looking as you drive through here. When do you ever see any form of animal other than livestock? In the vast expanse, as far as the eye can see, on either side of the road, what do you see? This is not habitat. You can call it open space if it makes you feel better, but that open space is just a different form of humans exploiting land. Humans have a hard time wrapping their heads around the idea that land can be used for something other than agriculture or development. In fact, all the creatures that lived there before we got there had a very good use for it. It was called living. And occasionally we recognize that problem and protect certain areas of land so that that doesn't happen to it. But in the case of a national park unit, the Point Reyes National Seashore, even then it is subjected to ranching. And instead of realizing the problem with the ranching taking place there, it is being expanded because of political corruption that favors big agriculture. And the negative effects of the destructive practice of cattle grazing on this local habitat as well as the environment at large is taking place year after year after year on every square foot of land within eyesight. Stop celebrating that. Well, what do you expect us to do, not eat? No, I expect you to take one of these fields that I'm driving by. Stop the car, turn 360 degrees, look at all that land, and plant superfood crops that humans can eat rather than letting cattle graze on it so that several years from now you can kill the poor things and turn them into the most inefficient form of food production that we've ever thought of. Early humans may have hunted meat, but you know what they did? They hunted it. They tracked it for months at a time on major hunts. They earned that food. They didn't grow it in mass production at the expense of the entire rest of the planet so that we could stop and eat the flesh of an animal at any place we go at any time. And yes, these fields are much more attractive than the massive feedlots where I grew up, or down Highway 5 in the Central Valley, or 50% of the rest of the United fucking States. And yes, these cattle out in these fields are better than these massive factory farms where the animals don't even go outside, or the huge feedlots where I grew up. But just because something else indescribably evil exists doesn't make this good. It all has to go. We have to change our basic approach to eating and coexisting on this planet. This planet was filled with animals, millions of species, and they all ate each other. And yet somehow, despite all of that killing and eating, life flourished. But not with humans. We take it all and convert it into what we want. Imagine if just one other species of animal, just one of all the species on this earth, besides humans, approached cultivating food the way that we do. Approached the idea of owning land so that nothing else could use it. We'd all be done already. We single-handedly have brought the earth to its knees by our approach to eating things. If even one other animal did the same thing, it would all be over. So whether or not it's natural for us to eat meat, or if we should continue eating meat, it really doesn't matter, because we can't keep doing it the way that we're doing it now. Nothing else does, nothing else ever has. And the fact that we do has had dire consequences.